Is your pantry being depleted faster than you anticipated? And do you need a little help understanding how you can use some of the random remaining ingredients to make delicious food? Hi, I'm Jonathan, the Provident Prepper. Social distancing, self-quarantines, and depleted store shelves are making for some really interesting times. We want to show you how you can take some basic leftover ingredients and pantry staples and make some really delicious meals. Stay with us.
I have spent years cooking for a large family, and one of the things that I have learned is that soup is an incredible way to create a hearty meal from an almost empty pantry. One of the things that's really cool about making soup is that anything goes. It's a great time to clean out the fridge or use those basics that you have left in your pantry to create a healthy meal for your family. Now, there are some important basics that you need to understand when you are creating a soup. The first is that soup has a base liquid, and your final product will be determined a lot by what your base liquid is. We use a lot of bone broth and vegetable broth that is homemade and that we freeze in these containers. Anytime we have leftover bones from meat, I will take those bones and put them in a crock pot along with some vegetables and let them slow cook for 24 to 48 hours. And it creates this wonderful bone broth to use in future soups. And then I just freeze it. You can also bottle it, but I go through it fast enough that I'm just comfortable freezing it. Canned vegetable juices can be a great soup base. So when you're using your canned vegetables in your soup, don't throw away that liquid. Make sure that you add it to the soup. Tomato juice makes a lot of great Italian flavored soups or chili. Canned milk can be substituted for cream if you're wanting to make a cream-based soup. If you have a can of cream of chicken soup, that is a great base to add carrots and broccoli and all kinds of vegetables for a really tasty cream soup. Another that you can use is bouillon, both beef and chicken. I tend to shy away from that a little bit because of the preservatives that are in it and the MSG, but quite frankly, it makes a very flavorful soup. When all else fails, water is a fantastic foundation for a soup. There are certain vegetables called aromatics, and these have a very rich flavor that really enhance the taste of the soup. Different herbs, garlic, onions, carrots, peppers, and celery, those are all different types of aromatics. Some of these aromatics are better when they are sautéed or sweated. I always like to saute my onions before putting them in a soup. I'll saute my onions for 4 or 5 minutes and then add the garlic and only saute it for just a minute because the garlic can turn bitter if it's sauteed too long. Sometimes I will saute the celery in there too, and sometimes I just add it directly to the soup. If it's possible to add some type of protein to your soup, it will help to satisfy you for longer. You can use frozen meat. If I'm making a hamburger soup, I brown the hamburger along with the onions and then I add it. I don't like to put raw meat into the soup. I like it browned first. You could also use dried meat, such as jerky. Canned meat works great in soups, but I will add it toward the last so that all it's doing is kind of warming up and simmering in the soup. If you cook it too long, it tends to fall apart. Freeze-dried meat also works great. I add it at the end. You can add canned beans. Dry beans, split peas, and lentils all work really well, but make sure you don't add salt or an acid like tomato until after they are softened. And eggs are a fantastic protein. When you think of eggs in a soup, we usually think of egg drop soup. You can add almost any vegetables to a soup and they will taste great. Lettuce, not so much, but pretty much any of the other ones. You can add fresh vegetables to soup. I always make sure if I'm using canned vegetables that I include the juice in the soup. Frozen vegetables are great. I'll add corn at the beginning, but if I'm using peas, I usually add them just before it's time to serve. I just prefer the fresh taste of peas versus the well-cooked taste. Dehydrated vegetables are fantastic, and also freeze-dried. With some of the freeze-dried vegetables, you may want to add them also at the end. Another ingredient that you can use in soup to make it feel more substantial is pasta, rice, or barley. If I'm using barley, I add it at the very beginning. If I'm using pasta or rice, I don't add those at the beginning. I cook all the other vegetables and everything together, and then toward the end, I add it just before serving, just long enough so the rice is cooked completely through or the pasta is cooked completely through. Both pasta and rice will turn kind of mushy if they are cooked too long. And now spices. The world is open to you when it comes to spices, but some of my favorites that I always keep stocked are salt, pepper, basil, oregano, and thyme and parsley. Those are my very favorites and are in most of my soups. But then in the Mexican versions, I'll have chili powder and cumin. Your soup will take on a whole different flavor depending on what spices you use, and many of these spices are just in your pantry all the time. That's it. That's all you need to know about making soup. I don't have real recipes for the soups I'm going to show you because these are all made by cleaning out my fridge or my pantry. This is a potato flake soup that we use some leftover baked potatoes, and of course we have carrots all the time, so it's got carrots and different spices and onions, but it's the potato flakes that are the thickener so that it feels very much like a cream soup. This is a black bean soup. It's a vegetarian soup that has a lot of protein in it. It's made with black beans, peppers, onions, and different spices. This is a white bean bacon soup, and I took a little bit of bacon and sauteed the onions in that. Remember the aromatics that make it taste so good? And then we cooked the beans along with some carrots in the soup. This one, I used an immersion blender to kind of blend it to give it more of a creamy texture, and then we added chives from our garden to the top. One of our family's very favorite soups is hamburger vegetable soup, and it is never the same. The base is hamburger, which I brown with onions and sometimes celery. And then we add all kinds of vegetables. In this one, you can see we've even added a can of beans. The flavor is incredible, and it's a very hearty meal using things that if you put them separately on a plate, just wouldn't satisfy anywhere near the way that this does. White bean turkey soup. This soup, I pre-soaked the white beans overnight, and then I cooked them until they were tender. Once they were tender, I added the sauteed onions and garlic and carrots and the meat, and then I continued to simmer it for the rest of the day. This one, if you notice, also has some kale in it. I put dried kale flakes in a lot of our soups just to give it a little nutritional kick, and it doesn't change the flavor of the soup. Another trick to make you feel fuller is to serve the thicker soups or the chilies over white rice. And there you have it. You can serve your family a hearty meal from basics that are left over in your pantry and in your fridge. Times are getting really hard for a lot of us, and this basic knowledge could really help stretch your food budget and help you make the best of the supplies that you have. You might want to visit the Provident Prepper and check out our post, 3-month supply of food, amazing peace of mind. This post will help you build a 3-month supply of the foods that you eat every day. Also, we did a 90-day no shopping challenge where we lived off of our food storage and what we could grow in our garden for 90 days. There is a whole series of videos on this, and those could be really interesting for you. And I encourage you to visit Prepper Survival Garden. There's both a post and a video, and there's some important principles that you can learn on how to grow a prepper survival garden that will see you and your family through challenging times ahead.
It's fun to create really great meals from basic ingredients. For example, this soup was created with some root crops, some parsnips and carrots that we just dug out of our garden this spring. Also some frozen leftover turkey from Thanksgiving, some dry beans, some onions, and other spices. We threw all this in the crock pot this morning, and it smells great. Take what you learned today and make some exciting meals for your family. And now for the questions of the day. What are your favorite ingredients to put in soups? And what ideas do you have for creating meals from an almost empty pantry? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.